I was 32, sitting on a rented balcony in the Door County, looking out at water so still, it made you feel like nothing bad ever happened. My mother was downstairs laughing like we'd been a normal family the whole time. I had coffee, too hot to drink, and I was telling myself to play nice for one long weekend. Then my phone buzzed. No name, just a number I didn't recognize, and 7 words that made my stomach fall straight through the floor. Fly home. Don't warn them. I didn't finish the coffee. I stood up, walked inside, and started packing. But before I get to that part, before I tell you what they planned, I need to tell you what my mother did, because that's the only way any of this makes sense. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. And let's continue. I was 11, still living in Madison. I'd brought home a school form that needed a parent's signature and $12 for a band trip to Wisconsin Dells. That's it. Just a signature and $12. Darla, my mother, was at the kitchen table flipping through her church planner and talking on the landline like she was ordering groceries. I remember her saying, flat and bored, "He's out tonight." She hung up, looked me over like I was something she didn't remember buying, and said, "Pack your stuff." I actually smiled. I thought she meant the band trip. My brother Lyle was already on the stairs. He was 13, leaning on the railing like it was a theater seat. He didn't say a word, just watched me, blank and still. Darla handed me a black trash bag and opened the front door like we'd rehearsed this. Rain came in sideways. She didn't even blink. Go, don't come back. No coat, no suitcase, no explanation. She shut the door behind me like it was just another Tuesday. I walked until my shoes filled with water, the bag ripped, and my library book slid into a gutter. I stood there staring at it like it meant something. But it didn't. It was just gone, like everything else. I ended up in Wanakee after dark, shivering and stupid. My grandparents' house was small and gray with porch lights that actually worked. My grandpa Cyrus Alder opened the door and didn't say a word at first. He looked at me, then stepped aside and pulled me in. He didn't call Darla. He didn't ask what happened. He just said, "You're safe here," and locked the door behind me. Cyrus didn't say another word that night. He handed me a towel, pointed to the hallway bathroom, and told me where the extra socks were. I dried off, changed, and sat on the edge of a twin bed with a quilt that smelled like cedar and starch. The house wasn't big, but it felt real, like nothing fake could stick to the walls. That was the first night I slept without listening for footsteps outside my door. Mavis hugged me like she'd been expecting me all along. She made waffles the next morning and didn't ask me to explain anything. She handed me clean clothes, put my wet ones in the wash, and said, "We don't need to talk about last night unless you want to." I didn't, not yet. That little house in Wanakee became my anchor. Cyrus didn't say much, but when he spoke, I listened. He showed me how to balance a checkbook, how to spot weak framing, and how to hold your face still when someone lies to your teeth. He used to say, "People will show you the truth if you don't rush to fill silence." Every couple of months, a man in a gray suit would show up. I'd see the car pull up neat by the curb, and Cyrus would meet him at the door with a nod. They'd go into the back room, shut the door, and sit for an hour. No laughter, no raised voices, just papers, murmurs, and a rhythm I couldn't quite follow. The man never stayed for lunch, never said hello to me. He just came and left on the dot. One day I asked, "What's he here for?" Cyrus replied without looking up from his ledger, "Paperwork." Then he flipped the page and added, "Not your job to worry about it. It wasn't rude. It was protective." I didn't know it at the time, but that man, Gideon Price, wasn't just a lawyer. He was a safeguard, like a bolt Cyrus installed behind the drywall. Darla never called. Lyle didn't write. My birthday came and went with only Mavis making a cake and humming while she frosted it. Christmas was quiet, with one string of lights and a fire in the wood stove. The silence from my mother's side wasn't surprising. What hurt worse was how normal it became. After a while, I stopped expecting anything. Mavis got sick when I was 16, the kind of sick where the medicine cabinet fills up and your clothes start to smell like clinic soap. She went fast, faster than anyone thought. I remember sitting on the floor outside her hospital room, pressing my forehead against the wall while Cyrus stood inside holding her hand. When she died, he didn't cry. He just sat with her for a long time and then walked out and said, "We'll be all right." The day after the funeral, he handed me an envelope with my name on it in Mavis's handwriting. The paper was yellowed, like she'd written it long before. Cyrus said. She wrote that for later. Don't open it unless you're forced to. I wanted to ask what that meant, but his face told me not to. He died 2 years later, early morning. Same chair he always used, local paper folded in his lap. I came downstairs and found him like that, peaceful, like he just stopped mid-sentence. I remember checking twice just to be sure. At the funeral, Darla showed up in black, like she was the one who's taking care of him. She cried soft and spoke softer, touching people's arms like she was the grieving daughter of the year. Lyle stood near the coat rack, slick haircut and cologne, acting like this was a networking event. He leaned in while people passed us in the hallway and said, all teeth and whisper, he left it all to Mom. You're out. Then he smiled like he was doing me a favor. I didn't say a word. In the parking lot, the man in the gray suit came up to me. Same neat tie, same unreadable face. He said, I'm Gideon Price, Cyrus's attorney. Then he handed me a card and added, keep this. When the time comes, you'll need me. I felt the weight of it the second it hit my palm. When I left for college a few months later, I had no send-off, no safety net, and no one checking the time of my bus. I had the envelope from Mavis I hadn't dared open, and Gideon's card tucked behind my license like a shard of something sharp I didn't understand yet. I carried that envelope and Gideon's card through 4 moves, 5 jobs, and a string of beat-up rentals across 3 states. I never opened one and never called the other. But I didn't throw them away either. That was the deal I made with myself. Keep them close, don't look too hard. I didn't thrive. That word makes me laugh. I scraped. I worked full-time while juggling trade school classes at night, and I lived cheap. I learned how to stretch $50 across a week, how to patch drywall and flip a water heater without calling a guy, and how to keep my head down around people who only looked friendly. Nobody was coming if I fell. By the time I hit 30, I was in Denver, buying rough little houses with uneven floors and bad roofs. I flipped what I could, rented out what I couldn't, partnered with people who had better credit but worse instincts. I wasn't the smartest in the room, but I was the one who remembered everything. I kept my margins tight and my mouth tighter. The nonprofit came next, not because I had some big bleeding heart, but because I remembered what it felt like to sleep with your shoes on, just in case. We ran a few small properties that offered short-term housing for teens who didn't have steady homes, nothing flashy. We kept the rooms boring, the rules simple, and the phone line open all night. Most kids didn't need a hero. They needed a place where nobody yelled. Marin Kimball became my closest friend around that time. She was a paramedic who spoke plain and called out lies like it was her job. We met at a city training event for community responders. First thing she ever said to me was, "You look like you slept in a crawl space." I said, "I did." She grinned, and that was that. Every now and then, when I checked my old financial aid records, I'd see deposits from something called the Baird Educational Trust. Always anonymous, always on time. I never asked, but I had a gut feeling. I never had proof, just a suspicion it traced back to Cyrus. He'd warned me not to open that envelope until I was forced to. Maybe this was how he tried to help without pulling me into a fight. Then one Wednesday night, my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in 20 years. Darla. I stared at it for a long time before I answered. Her voice was light, almost breathy. "Tobin, honey, how are you? I've been thinking about you so much." She told me she'd been going through a lot of tests, mentioned a tumor without saying what kind, and floated a few half apologies like trial balloons. It was surreal, hearing her act like we had a shared past worth revisiting. Then she said she wanted to get the family together. "Lyle and I were talking," she said, "and we thought it would be beautiful if we could all spend some time up in Door County, just the 3 of us. Maybe get a little cabin or something, like we used to." "Like we used to?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "You know what I mean? Things were hard, but I want to make it right, before it's too late." Marin was over the next night when I told her. She didn't even blink. If they're calling now, it's not love, it's a bill. That's the thing about Marin. She doesn't waste words. I still said yes, not out of hope, out of sickness. That little kid sickness that still wonders what would happen if you walked back through the same door and somebody actually let you stay this time. I told Darla 3 days. I booked my own room, my own flights, and said I wasn't signing anything, lending anything, or getting involved in family paperwork. She said, "Of course, too fast." That's when I knew she'd already practiced her lines. 20 minutes after I hung up, I got a text from a new number. Be careful, don't sign papers. Just that. No name, no reason. It felt like a hand on my collar. I stared at the screen, waiting for a second message. It never came. At the same time, though I didn't know it yet, a woman named Willa Bowen, who ran records over in Dane County, flagged a property request connected to Cyrus's name. She didn't ignore it. Years ago, Cyrus had told her, "If anyone asks about my will, call my lawyer." So she did. She called Gideon Price. Gideon Price got that call from Willa. Meanwhile, I was checking into a lakeside resort near Egg Harbor that smelled like pine oil and fresh pastries. The kind of place where everything's curated to feel like peace. Wide porches, soft jazz in the lobby, and staff who smile like your credit score walks ahead of you. Darla picked it on purpose. She met me near the check-in desk with tears already in her eyes and arms open like we were closing some beautiful, aching chapter. I didn't hug her like a son. I hugged her like someone trained not to leave their ribs exposed. "Oh, Tobin," she whispered, squeezing like she was owed something. "It's been too long. You look so strong." Behind her, Lyle walked in like a commercial. Clean haircut, tailored shirt, nice leather watch. That same smile he used in high school when teachers asked why he didn't do the assignment but still deserved the grade. He clapped my shoulder. "You're taller than I remember." Or maybe I just shrunk from all the spreadsheets. Then came the girlfriend, Tessa Jernigan. Dark blonde hair, smart smile, eyes like glass over sharp gravel. She worked events and corporate promo, knew how to say your name like it meant something while tracking your shoes and your wallet. Dinner was on the patio, white tablecloths, strings of lights overhead. Darla led with updates about her church committee, some prayer circle for widows, and a neighbor's casserole that changed her life. Lyle kept pivoting to markets, asset growth, and my cash position, like he was pitching a loan officer in disguise. Darla slipped into these little false memories, loud enough for the next table to catch. He was always stubborn, ran off young, wouldn't listen to anyone but himself. I prayed and prayed for his return. She said it while buttering bread, like it wasn't slander. I kept my mouth shut. Next morning, she arranged for family photos by the water, called the resort staff over, loud and proud. My son finally came back after all those years. I'm so blessed. Like I'd gone on a vision quest and just wandered home. That afternoon, I got another text from the same unknown number. "He's testing how much you're worth. Watch his questions." That was the moment I stopped pretending it was random. Someone was tracking what was being said in real time. I started clocking things. Lyle glancing at his phone mid-conversation. Tessa drifting close when I pulled out my room key. Darla watching me too closely whenever money came up. They were running a play, but I didn't know which one yet. That night, close to 1 a.m, I heard voices outside my door. Muffled at first, then sharper. Lyle. "He doesn't know," Darla snapped back. "Then make him comfortable." Footsteps shuffled away before I could open the door. I texted back, "Who are you?" The reply came quick. "Someone Cyrus trusted. Don't let them isolate you." I sat in bed with the lights off, just listening. Floor creaks, doors clicking shut, my own breath too loud. I didn't sleep. Underneath it all was the Denver property closing. 4 units for my nonprofit. If something blew back on me, the lender could bail, and those teens would lose the only steady beds we had. That deal couldn't take scandal, so I played along, ate their food, smiled for the pictures, waited for the real ask to hit the table. By the 3rd morning, the air at breakfast felt staged. Lyle walked in, carrying a thick manila folder, like he was presenting a birthday card. He set it down between the jam caddy and the coffee pot, squared it with the edge of the table, and gave me that patient smile he used when he thought he'd already won. "I've been sorting through Grandpa's estate mess," he said, sliding the folder toward me. "There are accounts, some property, a few loose ends. We figured it's time to consolidate everything into a family trust, clean and simple." Darla sat beside him, hands folded, posture straight. "I've already signed," she added gently. "It just keeps things unified." I opened the folder and scanned the first page. It didn't take long. The language sounded warm. Shared stewardship, family continuity, legacy protection, but buried under it were control clauses and voting provisions that locked authority into one managing partner. Lyle. My consent would exist on paper, but not in practice. "This gives you final say over every decision," I said, keeping my voice level. "It's just cleanup," Lyle replied, still smiling. "You're busy out in Denver. I handle logistics better." "I need time," I said, closing the folder. His smile tightened, the way a belt pulls one notch too far. "There's really nothing to think about. It's already structured. We just need your signature to finalize." Darla reached across and placed her fingers on my wrist like she was calming a nervous animal. "Sweetheart, this protects all of us. We don't have forever." I pulled my hand back. She didn't argue. Her expression just cooled like I'd stepped out of line. "I'm not signing anything today," I said, standing up. I took the folder with me. Back in my room, I locked the door and spread the pages across the desk. I photographed every sheet and emailed them to my attorney in Denver with one line, "Need review immediately." Then I called Marin. "If I say I'm fine, I'm not fine," I told her. She didn't hesitate. "Then you leave. You do not sit there and hope they grow a conscience." While we were still on the phone, another text came through from the unknown number. "They're rushing because the other guy is here." That was it. No name, just that phrase, "the other guy." I felt something cold move through my chest. Later, I learned the first warning text had come from Tessa. She'd helped Lyle set up a burner phone for what he called business privacy. When she saw messages labeled Plan B, she panicked. Instead of confronting him, she handed the burner to a private investigator named Jess O'Rourke. From that point on, the warnings kept coming from the same number, but the person behind them had changed. That night, I went down to the lobby bar like nothing was wrong. Tessa was there, stirring a drink she wasn't drinking. When she stood up to leave, she forgot a receipt on the table. There was a name scribbled across it, Vince, and a phone number underneath. I slid it into my pocket without looking at her. She saw me take it and turned her face toward the windows. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't make speeches. I went back upstairs and packed the way I learned to pack at 11. Quiet, efficient, no wasted movement. I left the folder on the desk. Just before dawn, another text came in. "First flight. Green Bay. Don't answer them. Gideon will meet you when you land." That was the moment it stopped feeling like paranoia. At 4:20 in the morning, I took the service stairs, walked out the side entrance like I was going for ice, and ordered a rideshare. I didn't look back until the car turned the corner. The resort faded behind us, and for the first time in 3 days, my chest unclenched. I kept my phone face down in my lap as we drove toward the airport. I flew out of Green Bay with a layover and let my phone battery die on purpose. I didn't want tracking. I didn't want pleading voicemails. I wanted silence. When I landed in Denver, I expected relief to hit me like warm air. Instead, I stepped into the terminal and saw a gray suit holding a white card with my name printed in thick black letters. Gideon Price looked older, thinner through the jaw, but his posture hadn't changed. Straight spine, steady eyes, like he'd been holding a promise in place for decades and wasn't about to drop it now. Beside him stood 2 uniformed officers and a woman with a plain face and sharp eyes that didn't blink much. Gideon nodded once. "Tobin. Thank you for coming directly here." I followed them without arguing. They led me into a small conference room off the terminal, the kind with a long table and walls that muffled outside noise. Gideon shut the door, then placed 3 things on the table with careful hands. A bound will, a sealed envelope I recognized instantly, and a thick folder divided with colored tabs. "This was triggered," he said calmly. "Your 32nd birthday and confirmed contact from Darla or Lyle. Both conditions are now met." He opened the will and turned it toward me. Cyrus Alder named me sole beneficiary. Assets held in trust until those 2 triggers. No shared control, no family consolidation, just me. He anticipated pressure, Gideon continued. He structured it so they would reveal themselves. I felt my throat tighten. The educational trust, funded by Cyrus, anonymous by design, he did not want you targeted. Then Gideon stated the number like he was reading a grocery list. "The estate is valued at approximately $3.4 million, including the house, investment accounts, and 2 parcels of land purchased decades ago." $3.4 million. I stared at him because Cyrus drove an old truck and patched his own gutters. The woman beside him stepped forward. "I'm Jess O'Rourke." Her voice was flat, efficient, private investigator. She opened the folder and laid out a timeline. Records requests on Cyrus's property. Burner phones purchased under fake business names. Meetings between Lyle and a man identified as Vince Calder. Your brother is not here for peace, she said. She slid printed screenshots across the table. Text messages between Lyle and a contact, saved as VC. If he won't sign, we do Plan B. Plan B costs more. Below that, more detail. Plan B described plainly: a marina, a fall near the water, a slip nobody questions. I read it 3 times. The words didn't blur. They didn't soften. Jessa placed another page in front of me. A message from Lyle to Darla. Might need the backup. Her reply, handle it. Don't attach my name. My hands went numb, not shaking, just gone. I stood up because I had to move, but my body didn't cooperate. The room tilted, sound narrowed, and the next thing I knew, I was staring at fluorescent lights while someone said, "Sir, stay with me. Count backward from 10. I heard my own voice, distant and mechanical. 10, 9, 8. When I sat up again, Marin was just outside the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight. She must have driven straight from her shift the second I texted that I'd landed. You don't get to faint on me, she muttered once I was upright. We're not done. Gideon explained that Wisconsin investigators were already looped in. Denver police were present because I had landed here, not back there. They needed me safe before making any moves. Then he looked at me and said, steady as stone. Your grandfather didn't guess details, Tobin. He guessed character. That landed heavier than the money. Cyrus hadn't predicted text messages or marina docks. He predicted who they were. I leaned forward, palms flat on the table, and said, tell me what happens next. I spent that night at a mid-range hotel near the airport. Marin sat in the corner chair like she was pulling overnight security, hood up, legs crossed, hand on her phone. She didn't talk much, just watched the door and made sure I ate something. I didn't sleep more than an hour. Gideon told me not to go home alone. He told me not to post. Darla lives for narrative fights, he said. Don't give her an opening. The next morning, he forwarded a short email with no pleasantries. Vince Calder had been picked up just after dawn. He'd taken one look at the text evidence and folded. Started talking before they even cuffed him. Jessa's report came later. No drama, just the kind of clean bullet point summary that makes your stomach turn. Deputies met Lyle at his office just after lunch. They read him his rights and walked him past his staff, people who had only ever seen him polished and polished again. I pictured him smiling too long, saying, "This is a misunderstanding," while sweating through his collar. Darla didn't wait long to call me. The screen lit up, and I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice wasn't afraid. It was furious. "What did you do?" she hissed. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What happened?" Just that, I said. "He hired someone to make me disappear." She exhaled hard. "You're exaggerating." It hit hard. Not because I needed her to believe me, because she didn't even blink. Within 48 hours, she launched her prayer group campaign. I started getting voicemails from old church people and neighborhood parents. Some were warm and confused, just praying you'll see the bigger picture. Some were sharp. "How dare you attack your mother while she's sick?" A few just said, "What's wrong with you?" That noise didn't just bruise my pride, it hit my work. One Denver donor forwarded me a screenshot of a Facebook post with my name tagged under phrases like ungrateful son and false witness. He asked, "Are you safe to fund?" The lender for our 4-unit transitional housing project called me. She said, "We just need to make sure there aren't legal distractions that would put our collateral at risk." Polite. But I heard the subtext. She was looking for a reason to pull the deal. I didn't engage online. I didn't argue. I did what Cyrus would have done. Documented every message, archived every post, let Gideon do the sorting. He said, when gossip crosses into pressure, it becomes admissible. Keep everything. Then I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to since I was a kid. Patrice Boyd. She used to live down the street from Darla back in Madison. I remembered her as the kind woman with the fig tree and quiet eyes. "I'm sorry," she said first. "I should have done more." She'd been the one who called the police that night Darla threw me out. She saw me walking with a trash bag through the storm. An officer came by the house. Darla told him I'd gone to cool off with relatives. Patrice said, "That was a lie, and I let it sit for 20 years. That broke something open in me. Not because it healed anything, just because it confirmed what I'd always known. Darla didn't just snap. She planned it, covered it, and other people helped her stay clean. I started seeing Dr. Suri Tran around then. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. My body kept reacting like the storm never stopped. Dr. Tran didn't let me deflect or joke my way out of it. She sat still and waited until I told the truth. Meanwhile, Jessa was still digging. She found another pressure point, Lyle's debt. High interest, private, predatory. He was in deep with one of Vince Calder's lenders. The accident talk? That wasn't dramatics. That was desperation. Jessa's report didn't sit for long. Gideon moved fast. He filed in Dane County to validate Cyrus's will and freeze the estate before Darla could twist it into one of her family trust traps. The language she used was always soft, unity, shared values, togetherness. But the structure was a vice. Gideon knew better. Darla's attorney responded quick, claiming Cyrus hadn't been of sound mind when he signed. Standard opening move meant to plant doubt. But Cyrus had prepared for that years in advance. Dr. Callum Vance, a psychiatrist from Madison, had evaluated Cyrus 3 days before the final draft of the will. He documented everything: mental clarity, decision-making ability, and a clear explanation of why Cyrus wanted the estate held from his daughter and grandson. Gideon got the report filed before Darla's team could finish their second email. Then came Willa Bowen, the archivist. Willa was the kind of strict that makes judges feel like they're not being gamed. She showed up with a full chain of custody breakdown: who held what, when, and how. She had backup copies of the will in 3 formats and could tell you exactly when Cyrus first brought up the trust restructure. No drama, no gaps. Gideon handed me a box after one long strategy meeting and said, "Your grandfather wrote everything down. Inside were old notebooks and dated notepads, Cyrus's journals. He hadn't just written about finances. He'd written about Darla, about her threats, her phone calls, her sudden silences. One entry described him calling Lyle's school and being told he'd been pulled out. Another logged an attempt to file for guardianship over me. Denied. Reading those pages was like following footprints in a pitch-black room. I finally saw what I hadn't known I was living through. Buried near the bottom was something I didn't expect. A notarized affidavit signed by my father, Evan Caro. He had backed Cyrus's attempt at guardianship over me. Just one page, one moment of clarity, one act that somehow made him real again. I'd spent so many years thinking of him as a ghost that seeing his signature punched a hole in that story. I didn't forgive him, but I stopped pretending he'd never tried. Later, through Gideon, he sent a letter. Short, careful. He said he was willing to testify if needed, but he wasn't ready to see me. Same door, still closed. Tessa Jernigan became the messy hinge everything swung on. Through her lawyer, she admitted she'd helped Lyle gather my flight info, my room assignment, even my meal preferences. She handed over the burner phone and a stack of financials that showed just how deep Lyle was in. Predatory lenders, double line clauses, balloon payments set to explode. She didn't do it out of guilt. She did it because she realized she could sync with him. I'll take honest fear over fake love any day. While Gideon and Jessa worked the legal front, I had my own mess to clean up. I called a board meeting at the nonprofit and laid it out straight. The whole story, the money, the family, the smear campaign. I wanted them to hear it from me, not from Darla's army of whisperers. I told them I wasn't stepping down, but I understood if they needed distance. Nobody walked. Marin kept showing up without fail. She dropped off meals I didn't ask for, drove me to court prep when she could have been sleeping, and reminded me flat out, "You don't have to argue with people who want you dead." She said it like it was weather, like it was obvious. That kind of loyalty still feels new, like a coat I'm not sure I'm allowed to wear. But the courtroom didn't. Dane County Circuit Court was packed the morning of the hearing. Darla's church friends filled one side of the benches, whispering like they were waiting for choir practice to start. On my side sat Gideon, Patrice Boyd, Willa Bowen, and 2 local reporters who smelled a story worth printing. The air felt heavy with performance. Darla walked in wearing black and a small silver cross, tissue already in hand. I watched her face shift depending on who glanced her way. Soft grief for the judge, wounded confusion for the crowd, tight irritation when her eyes passed over me. Gideon didn't waste time. He laid out the stack clean and precise. Cyrus's will, Dr. Callum Vance's competency evaluation, Willa's documented chain of custody, and copies of Cyrus's journals. No theatrics, just structure. Darla's attorney argued that Cyrus had been manipulated, isolated, confused in his final years. He suggested I'd pressured him for money. I didn't react. I let Gideon handle it. Gideon stood and said, steady and measured. Dr. Vance evaluated Mr. Alder 3 days before execution of the will. His findings were clear. Sound mind, free of coercion, fully aware of his decisions. He submitted the report without raising his voice. Willa testified next. She walked the court through every document transfer and archive entry, like she was reading from a recipe, dates, times, signatures. She left no holes to crawl through. Then Patrice took the stand. Her voice shook at first, but it steadied. She described seeing an 11-year-old boy walking in the rain with a trash bag. She described calling the police. She described the officer knocking on Darla's door. Darla told him the child left voluntarily, Patrice said. That was not true. That word, voluntarily, hung in the room. I saw Darla's jaw tighten. For the first time, her saint routine flickered. When Darla's lawyer tried again to paint Cyrus as unstable, Gideon calmly opened one of the journals. He read a single line. Darla said, "Keep him. I don't want him." Silence hit hard. Even the church ladies stopped whispering. Then Gideon informed the judge about the parallel criminal investigation. He entered the messages between Lyle and Vince Calder, including Darla's reply telling Lyle to handle it and not attach her name. He didn't dramatize it. He just read the words. Darla didn't cry. She went still, like a statue waiting for someone to move her. The judge validated the will and confirmed me as sole beneficiary. The estate was locked in my name. Immediately after, Gideon requested the threatening communications be formally forwarded to the criminal division. I could hear a reporter's pen scratching fast across paper. Lyle never got a spotlight moment. With Vince cooperating and Tessa's evidence on record, his attorney pushed for a plea agreement. Lyle took it because he ran out of moves. At sentencing, he looked at me with flat eyes and said, "I just needed the money, no apology, no recognition of what he'd risked, just need." That was enough for me. Darla wasn't charged separately, but she lost the currency she valued most, reputation. Her church committee quietly removed her. Invitations dried up. The story she'd controlled for decades flipped in one season. For the first time in my life, the truth didn't whisper. It stood up in daylight. I didn't blow the inheritance on anything shiny. I put it where Cyrus and Mavis had always put their love, into structure. Walls, doors, locks that worked, heat that stayed. Within a year, I'd bought time, repairs, and quiet for the work that actually mattered. Cyrus's old house in Wanakee became the first transitional home under my nonprofit. I didn't turn it into a shrine. I didn't hang photos or write plaques. I kept it plain and solid. Clean rules, hot meals, lights that always turned on. A place where you could fall asleep without listening for footsteps that meant trouble. The first 2 kids we took in were Hollis and Darian, 16 and 17. Hollis had eyes like broken glass and didn't speak for 2 days straight. Darian was loud, good-hearted, and cooked like someone guessing at instructions. They didn't want therapy talk. They didn't want to be fixed. They wanted to know where the extra towels were and if anyone in this house lied. I said, "I got put out once too. This place is different." Hollis stared at me for a long beat like he was deciding if I was real, then gave me a single nod. That was his version of a handshake. Patrice Boyd started volunteering twice a week. Not for praise, she showed up like someone paying a debt, folding laundry like it was penance. Willa Bowen handled the licensing paperwork and kept us organized. Marin stopped by for medical check-ins and left extra groceries in the cabinet without asking if we needed them. My family wasn't blood. It was the people who showed up without needing me to bleed for them first. Darla came by once. Just once. She stood across the street from the house, staring at the porch like she was trying to conjure something. I only knew because Hollis poked his head in and said, "Some lady's lurking outside." That was how he said threat detected. I stepped out but stayed on the sidewalk. Darla didn't cross it. She looked smaller than I remembered, not sick, just deflated, like someone who'd been surprised that actions had consequences. "Could I come in?" she asked, voice small, just once, just to see it. "No," I said. "Not cruel, not angry, just done. This is a safe place for them, not for you." She nodded like she'd already practiced the rejection and turned away without a single excuse. Years passed. I didn't hate her, not in a hot, burning way. I just didn't answer the door anymore. That was the line I drew, the one I wish someone had drawn for me when I was 11 and soaked through from rain. The best revenge I ever got wasn't Lyle's sentence or Darla's social collapse. It was hearing Hollis laugh in the kitchen at midnight. Loud, unguarded, real. Like the world had finally failed to break him, and knowing, deep in my chest, that nobody could knock the ground out from under me again. One last thing, can I ask you something real quick? If you've got the hype feature, tap it to support this video and help it reach more people. Then please subscribe and hit like. It's important to us, and it's one click. And tell me in the comments, when family only shows up to take from you, how do you set a boundary without feeling guilty?